God, amen. So we're up to 1 Timothy chapter 3. 1 Timothy chapter 3. And this is a very interesting chapter. I like to look at this chapter as job descriptions. This is a chapter of basically, remember we said this letter, just a quick little recap. This letter is from St. Paul to St. Timothy. And St. Timothy, who he was a good guy that he was a disciple of St. Paul. So St. Paul was like guiding him, and he spent time with him, and he's the one who baptized him, and not baptized him, circumcised him, and then he went and he finally became a bishop. So he's a young bishop. So just like any role, St. Paul is looking after St. Timothy. And St. Timothy is now in Ephesus, right? So let's read here and we'll see what St. Paul is talking to him about in this chapter. I feel like this chapter, usually, sometimes when we're reading, because remember, these are letters. So letters aren't broken up into chapters. The chapters thing came way after. But these are normal letters. So, but for some reason here, I feel like it's a complete shift from what we were talking about last week to this week. So if somebody can read chapter 3, verse 1 to... Let's read till 7, 1 to 7.
This is a faithful saying, if a man desires the position of a bishop, he desires a good work. A bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, temperate, sober-minded, of good behavior, hospitable, able to teach, not given to wine, not violent, not greedy for money, but gentle, not quarrelsome, not covetous, one who rules his own house well, having his children in submission, with all reverence. For if a man does not know how to rule his own house, how will he take care of the church of God? Not a novice, lest being puffed up with pride he fall into the same condemnation as the devil. Moreover, he must have a good testimony among those who are outside, lest he fall into reproach and the snare of the devil.
Thank you. Qualifications for a bishop. So, it might seem out of place that we're going to be sitting here talking about the qualifications of a bishop, because it might not be applicable, right? But the beauty of this is St. Paul, remember we said, if this letter was just supposed to be a personal letter to St. Timothy, it wouldn't have been in the Bible. This letter is for us, because just as St. Timothy was a servant of God, St. Timothy is a leader in Christianity. St. Timothy is a Christian among people who might not have the values of Christianity. That's who we are. So, remove the word bishop and think of Christian. Because here's the thing. Before we do that, let's talk a little bit about what a bishop does or what a bishop is. So the word bishop the definition of a word bishop is, he's an overseer. So that's why it's a bishop over an area. You don't see a bishop responsible for a church. The bishop is responsible for an area. He's an overseer. So we are in a hierarchical church. Hierarchical means there's levels. Just like the U.S. government, there's levels. There's the president, there's the Senate, there's a House of Representatives, there's Congress, there's the branches, there's checks and balances. There's a system. Same thing in the church. But the beauty of this, the hierarchy started with Christ. Never was changed. In our church, we have the same hierarchy from Christ. So Christ came, right? Was incarnate, lived on earth, and established the church. Established the church. He established the church, as we see when we repeat it in the liturgy, in the institution narrative, when he says, "Take, eat of it, all of you, for this is my body, to be broken, which is for you and for many others, to be given for the remission of sins." Same thing with the blood. He says this. He's established a church. But he didn't just establish a church and say, "Okay, well, figure it out. Do whatever you guys want to do." No. He created, like I said, a hierarchy. He took 12 people. What requirements did he have for these people? None. Zero. The only requirement wasn't a degree, wasn't a specific lifestyle, it wasn't knowledge, wasn't anything. It was, like Negi said,
willingness to follow him.
"Here I am, Lord. Follow me?" Okay. So that's something that we all have the potential of. That term, "follow me." So who did these 12 disciples become? Whatever happened to them?
Leaders of the church.
The leaders, the original leaders of the church. They became the first bishops. They're considered the first bishops. So these 12, and also the 70 apostles, right? So when they during Pentecost, what happened in Pentecost? What happened? Tongues of fire. Holy Spirit descended. Tongues of fire. Apostles all there. They were praying. But we call Pentecost the birthday of the church. That's what we call it. That's the birthday of the church. Because that's when now the church is going to start spreading. They got different tongues. They spoke in different tongues. They went to different places. These apostles now became the bishops. So something interesting. St. Thomas went to India, right? St. Peter went to Rome. Well, he stayed in Jerusalem for a little bit, as we see in Acts, then went to Rome. St. Paul, Greece, and we see he wasn't even there at Pentecost. That was before his conversion. But he's also considered one of the bishops. Just an overseer. Does that make sense? Now, St. Mark went to Egypt. If you look at our list of popes, St. Mark's the first pope. So that's something, like we're now on number 118. So the first one was St. Mark. And then, does anybody know who the second one was? Yeah, St. Ananias, who helped St. Mark. He's the one who kind of was like the entryway for St. Mark to start the service in Egypt. He became the second pope. And then we know like there's people we know, St. Athanasius, number 20. There's all these bishops who are popes. That's what a bishop is. A bishop is the pope is a bishop. Let me correct that. Sorry. The bishop is a pope. No, sorry. Yes, the pope is an archbishop. So he's a bishop. He's a bishop. He's first among equals.
The Bishop of Alexandria, and because he's at the see of
Yes.
Alexandria, he is considered to be
The highest.
the arch.
Yeah. So the Holy Synod is all the bishops meeting together and help like leading the church. Church, capital C. right? So like all the churches. Now, anybody have any questions so far about like the way bishops? Okay, so or the Pope. So now we have Pope Tawadros, and I think it's such a beautiful blessing that we were able to see how God chose Pope Tawadros. Like that was an incredible time. And now we see with bishops. I never personally grew up in a place where there's no diocese. I grew up in New York. It became a diocese after I left. But when I was there was no diocese. So I didn't even understand the role of a bishop. We had a bishop there, but there was no role. Like I didn't understand what. Coming here, I saw what, like the structure that is set up, what a diocese is and stuff like that. So a diocese is basically the area where the bishop oversees. Okay? Now, I just wanted to give that little bit like of an intro, just so we can move forward. Last thing, and it says here, so we're not confused, bishops used to be able to get married. It's around the 7th century or so, that's when bishops started not becoming married. And then also, because it was the monastic movement, that's where the most educated people were monks at the time. Like they went and they studied. Like Saint Macarius Monastery was one of those monasteries that was basically after the School of Alexandria burned, they became the next School of Alexandria. All the manuscripts and everything like was hidden there. So people used to study in the desert. They used to go and learn and memorize, and that's why the church started taking. It became like I don't know how to say this, but basically it became normal for monks then become bishops, and then they get put in certain areas. No one goes into a monastery saying, I want to be a bishop. And it just doesn't, like you don't. But you'll see it. You'll see the there's different things we're going to stop at to discuss it. But I just wanted to give like a little bit of an intro before we read that. So we'll do verse by verse. So this is a faithful saying. If a man desires the position of a bishop, he desires a good work. I just said that no one desires. But again, it's different. Desires the position of a bishop. Here St. Paul saying it's a good work. Why? Why is St. Paul saying that? What do you think?
Can we ask that question another way?
Sure.
Is a bishop in this time different than now?
Well, you just said, yeah, it was.
I think so. I think bishop, he was willing to be martyrs, no fancy life.
Well, we have to.
Nothing yet.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So again, remember, I want us to turn it to Christian leader. Okay, so just so we can relate to it more. So this is a faithful saying. If a man desires the position of a Christian leader, he desires a good work. Now it seems more comfortable. The idea of desiring a position, any position. Let me ask you a question. Is it wrong to desire promotion at work? Why?
It's encouraged.
Why?
They're looking forward to be better, and
you said the word right there. It's for your own benefit. Now, there's a difference. Some people desire it for bad reasons.
yeah, wrong reasons.
Wrong reasons. I want to be the leader so I can fire this person, or I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. it's important to look at it in a sense of, if we're desiring good for ourselves, that's good. That's important. St. Paul is encouraging that. St. Paul is saying, desire good. Desire to be good. So, remember, he's talking to Timothy. Timothy's already a bishop. So he's not like telling him for his own, he's saying it in general. So he continues and says, a bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, temperate, sober-minded, of good behavior, hospitable, able to teach. The word blameless is very, very important. When you think of blameless, we just read it in the litany, right? What comes from that? What do you think of? What do you think of?
Forgiveness.
Okay.
So can you go back for the first verse again, please?
Yes.
You skipped it so quickly.
No.
It needs more explanation.
Okay.
You know, now people, we used to say no one can desire to be a priest or a bishop. It's a God calling. For myself, I cannot say I want to be a priest. God chose you. He didn't choose me. If He chose me, I have the right to say yes or no. But if He didn't, then I cannot desire it. That's what we used to...
No, that. There's a difference between desiring a calling versus desiring, like your goal. It's about intention. It's really about intention. What are you desiring exactly? If you're desiring, like, is it wrong to desire to be a servant in the church? What do you think?
No.
No. Why? Still it's a leadership position in certain aspects. I talked a lot before about how we've kind of ruined the term servant. We've turned it into an office. But put that to the side for a second. Is it wrong to want to be a servant? Like, we have a servants prep class that's going on right now, or it starts at 6, and it's like I was just there with them, and these are people who are coming in desiring to be servants. Is it wrong? Why?
Because they want.
Huh?
They want.
They want for what purpose?
Serve God.
To serve God. They want to for their own salvation. In our church, we have to look at things in a salvific way. We have to look at things in a salvific way. We have to always go for our salvation. We always have to seek our own salvation. You know, on the in an airplane, once you go in there, you see you have to watch a commercial. Like even if you're there for a while, they'll cut you off from whatever you're doing. You have to watch the security or the safety video, right? And they try to make it fun and exciting, and depending on the airline and stuff like that. But you go in there, and one of the things is if there is a loss of oxygen, the thing's gonna come out of the ceiling, the mask. What is the first thing they say? Who puts it on first? Help yourself first. Then the kid. So you have to look at yourself. Our mind sometimes won't work like that. No, I have to make sure. No, but then if you're not staying safe, you can't help anybody. So here it's the same thing. Here it's, what are you desiring exactly? If you're desiring a position of power, that's a problem. So you're saying, yeah, bishop, you can't, right now in our church, you can't, no one asks to be a priest. No one asks to be a bishop. No one asks to be the pope. Like, I'll never forget watching Pope Tawadros, when his name was chosen. It broke me. I couldn't believe it. Because he didn't look at it as a position of power. He didn't look at it as like, this is a position like, oh, like I'm going to be in every church is going to say my name every Sunday. And no. It was a huge responsibility. So you don't desire a office. There's no campaign. You're not doing an election. There's none of that. But you desire to be a Christian. You desire to be, and for that, he's saying that's good. Does that make sense? So that's what I'm saying. Use it as a Christian leader or a servant. Change the word bishop because it's going to help us. Jacob, we're on chapter 3.
I got it.
Yeah, okay.
This is all about you, chapter 3.
I'm not a bishop.
Yeah, you're the overseer. You're in big trouble. I'm going to check you out.
You're going to get me in trouble if you call me a bishop.
Checking you out.
So, 1 Timothy chapter 3. So, verse 2 it says, a bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, temperate, sober-minded, of good behavior, hospitable, able to teach. Now, let's take these and break them down. Blameless is another word, huh?
No fault.
No fault. But does that mean the person has to be perfect?
No.
That's the key. In Christianity, we're called to be perfect. There's no ifs, ands, or buts.
Righteous.
Well, righteousness leads us to perfection.
Right.
But that our goal is perfection. Is to be whole again. Is to go back to the way. It's constant desire to unite to Christ. That fellowship with Christ. That partaking of divine nature. That's what our role as Christians are. To connect to Christ. To be perfect as He is perfect.
Yeah.
We're trying.
Huh?
We're trying.
Trying, yes.
Try.
The goal is to always try.
Good luck.
Well, that's the goal.
Good luck.
I know. Well, the beauty of it, Jacob. The beauty of it is that we don't, Jacob. The beauty of it is we don't depend on luck. If we depended on luck, we'd be in trouble.
Yeah, we're credited for trying.
Exactly. So our goal is to work towards Christ. Now we have the church, we have the sacraments, we have the Holy Spirit, we have all this. We have God leading us towards God. So that's what being blameless means, is working towards perfection. Meaning you're doing your best. You're constantly repenting. You don't want to have any blame. Does that make sense?
Working on it.
Yeah.
Work in progress.
Yes. Blameless is like when you look up to somebody. Like you look up to somebody, you might not see the faults in that person. Right? Like you look up to somebody, you tend to remove the faults. Obviously no one's perfect, but you tend to look at them like, oh man, like it's perfect. Like I'll give like kind of a silly example, but like when people talk about Michael Jordan, perfect basketball player, the best of all time. You don't think about all the shots he missed. You don't think about all the technical fouls he had, all the things, all the stuff that he did that was bad, all the games he lost, you don't think about that stuff. You think about the good.
All his girlfriends.
No, you don't think about all that stuff.
He had many, many girlfriends.
You don't think about that stuff. But what I'm saying is, being blameless is you become an example. You are living, like Rolla said, you're constantly working towards perfection. You're constantly working towards becoming like Christ. So you become an example. Next, the husband of one wife. There's context here. In Ephesus, people used to marry just multiple wives. People were living in adultery. People were living in
orgies and everything.
It was a mess. So he's saying, this is important. If you're going to be a Christian leader, you have to live like a Christian. You have to be careful. You have to be very careful. Because, why? You're an example. So if you're having multiple wives, you're saying that it's completely okay. So he's saying, again, you have a standard to live up to. Is it okay for a Christian to, as a leader, Christian, like we're all called to be leaders. That's why I want to be careful. Like it's not, there's no like level like you're a Christian and then you're a Christian leader, then you're the Pope. Like no, you're as a Christian, you're an example to others. It could be people at work, it could be people at school, it could be people in the street, it could be people in your family, right? You're constantly working towards Christ and to be an example. So
Yeah, I have one question.
yeah,
What about a Muslim that
Yeah.
has multiple wives and he follow Christ?
I like that one better.
Does he has to leave his wife or he has to stay with them?
so you're saying they've converted already?
He,
Yeah, he's converted.
yes, not the wives.
It's so conversion is not just a like certificate.
No.
It's a lifestyle. So you have to change your lifestyle for
So
Christ.
he has to leave his kids and his
That's what I mean.
No, I'm just saying, but God, he doesn't want to separate the kids from the father. He
Well,
doesn't want that pain for the kids.
so something to always think about is if you live for Christ, your whole life is for Christ. So every aspect of your life. So yes, certain things are going to be painful. Like certain, forget that example. I'm going to use a different example. Let's say I decided I'm going to take my relationship with Christ to a different level. 2017 is the year that I'm going to do my best to resemble Christ in everything that I do. Right? Start fresh, all of these things. Now, but I have an addiction. Does that stop me? I have an addiction. Let's say it's a drug addiction or whatever, a sex addiction, whatever.
Slow you down.
Not even slows you down. It creates a barrier because you won't be able to continue. You won't be able to continue. You've created a situation where you can't continue. You've created a barrier for yourself.
Serve two masters.
Exactly. You serve two masters. You created this. The sin has become your God as well, your king. So you have to cut off.
One of them.
You have to cut off. So we see that throughout the Bible. We see that throughout Scripture, that God says you have to cut off in order to follow me. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I want to help you with that. You're applying a higher standard on this marriage thing, but Paul said that you marry whoever you marry, a non-believer, you're being righteous. Will convert the other person.
Yeah.
He didn't say divorce. He said stay with him.
Yeah.
Stay with him, and your example will have an effect on him.
Yeah. So St. Paul uses that as an example. But my point is, like, if you're, it obviously depends on, every situation is different. So like, there's no like general rule, like everybody must do this, no. But if, for example, in a regular, like somebody who's born Christian or whatever, but let's say he decides, okay, I want to take my relationship with God serious, but he's in a bad relationship right now. Can he continue in the bad relationship? If this person's bringing him down, if this person is not helping them be Christian, if this person is not a positive influence, you're going to have to cut it. So every situation is different. So this is a very specific situation. So in that case, there's guidance. He sits with his father's confession. He sits with, like the counseling and to figure out a plan. Because you're right, kids are important, the family's important. But also, like, there's certain things that would struggle.
Even like a normal, not to say normal, but even like a household that's husband and wife and children, like Bruno was saying, if it's stopping you from Christ, there's still like the verse that says if you choose, your family or your kids, or if you love anybody more than Christ, right?
Yeah.
So it's still like, I think like what you're saying, that it's a heart matter. Like you choose Christ and you trust that He's going to work everything.
The decision is the first part.
Right.
I choose Christ. And then the lifestyle comes. So every situation is different. Yeah.
So I understand Christianity, you're supposed to practice monogamy. But in the Old Testament, and I'm not a scholar, but based on what I remember reading, didn't Abraham have more than one? Or all of those people?
Jacob did.
So, like, they were all following God. And again, not because I agree with it, I absolutely don't, but when God said He's the same yesterday, today, forever, why did He allow that then?
Very good question.
Okay.
Very good question. So, yeah. Go on.
Christ answered that whenever the Pharisees approached Him. And He just said in the beginning it was not so. Whenever they said, well, Moses allowed for a certificate of divorce. And He said, but He did that just because of the hardness of your heart.
Yeah.
And He always wanted them to return. He said God made man. What they pray in the wedding ceremony.
He didn't push him
in
too hard.
Matthew, in the wedding, He says, in the beginning, it was not so what God has put together that no man take apart. Christ always wanted to go back and say, well, what had God intended from the beginning? What happened in the Old Testament was astray from what God intended.
Does that make sense?
No, because you're saying, I understand divorce, God didn't want them to get divorced, but I'm saying, why did He encourage and allow polygamy in the Old Testament?
He didn't encourage it. It was the childbearing was basically understood as the fruit of the relationship or the marriage, and basically if you weren't bearing children, you were shameful. So in efforts to have more children, which is basically what they prized, and their prestige was in their childbearing.
Yeah.
And so they wanted to have as much children as possible. That was basically symbolic of their level of status in society and so on. And so whenever Abraham didn't have children, he went to Hagar.
Which was not a good thing.
Which is not a good thing. Yeah. But that's basically how they understood it. So they wanted to have as many children as possible. And then when Christ came, He wanted to correct that. He said, yes, this happened. You had certificate of divorce, they had many wives, whatever. But in the beginning, what God has created from the beginning is Adam and Eve.
So just so we can move from this point, we could talk more about that, because it's not the first thing, it's not the last thing you're going to see that might seem different from the Old Testament. But Christ came to fulfill the law. So there's certain things that were incomplete. He came to complete it.
I was just thinking maybe because of the sin that was taking place in this specific
sure.
in Ephesus.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why He changed it.
Oh, no. Christ talked about it when He was on earth with the Pharisees, like He was talking about. They kept asking Him, like, all right, well, what if so-and-so dies? Who's going to get married? And then what happens? What happens in heaven? Like, they were just trying to trap him. So in this, it's just the idea, like what we learn here, we know from Christ. St. Paul didn't come up with his own things. It's all from Christ.
Yeah.
Let's just so we can move. Are you going to talk about the next?
Just real quick.
Okay.
This this chapter is specifically for overseers, not for the regular people.
Well,
It says if you are an overseer,
Well-
you should have.
no, but so we actually, before you came,
Specifically.
no, but we talked about this chapter is also for servants or Christians, Christian
Elders.
leaders. Christian leaders. So in our world, yes, it's considered qualifications for a bishop, but it's also for us, because if it was just for a bishop, why is it public? Why is it passed down all this stuff? It's a bishop back then. Or a bishop now is an overseer. We can be overseers of certain things. We're overseers in our family. We're overseers in our church and in our services, and so it's that type of thing.
How do you weigh that? How do you measure that with what Paul said in another place, that he would prefer them to be single, because if you are married, then you have responsibility for the wife, and that takes away from your duties in church. He would prefer.
Well, that was also a specific.
Paul's talking about the desires of the flesh.
Yeah.
He's saying if you have this burning desire.
No, if you have a wife, then you got to take care of your wife.
Well, no, but he's saying it's the burning desire. That's in Corinthians 7. Yeah, he's talking about. Yeah. So this is two different.
Be married and be burned.
Yeah, two different things. So let's just move on in this part. It says, bishop must be blameless, husband of one wife, temperate, sober-minded, of good behavior, hospitable, able to teach. All of these are things that as Christians we are called to do. What do you think of when you think of temperate? How would you define temperate?
Getting upset more easily.
Getting upset easily?
Yeah. Temperate.
Moody?
You don't have that peace.
Okay.
Skin. Thin skin. Like Donald. He gets upset.
Control.
Is temperate like moderate?
Yes.
I think of Saint Anthony, what Saint A was writing about when he said of Saint Anthony, the most distinguishable thing was after he fasted, he wasn't like a twig after 20 years of no one seeing him, and he wasn't like fat from sitting around all day. He was kind of temperate because of his
moderation.
So
that's the first thing.
Yeah, they're all related. He's listing characteristics. These are great tools to kind of check off for our own lifestyle. Like being sober-minded means don't be out of control. Sober-minded means just think about the opposite of sober, like drunk-minded. You're just no control, just kind of like whatever. You say whatever you want, whenever you want, loud, not loud. Like you're not being sober-minded. And then he continues, it says, of good behavior. There's a standard. There's a standard that we ought to live by. So, society sets a standard. What's society's standard?
Success. Money.
It's gotten lowered and lowered and lowered and lowered. Like even just think about in our lives. I remember, and I'm sure everybody here remembers, when you turn on the TV, there was words that couldn't be said. They just forget words that couldn't be said. There's ways that you dress that you couldn't dress like that. You couldn't. There couldn't be shows about certain things. They couldn't be. It was, much more conservative than now. Even on the radio, you're listening to something. Like now, you turn on the radio, music is unfiltered, right? Like there's so it's constant. It's a constant, like a downward spiral. It's just constantly, standards are lowering. As Christians, our standard is a bar that it's Christ. It's Christ. It's never going to get lower. It's Christ. It's not a standard, like, it's not, it's not subjective at all. It's Christ.
Standard.
So what happens is we justify things. We create a Christian standard. When we say, it's not that bad. I'm not the worst person in the world. There's people worse than me. I'm not this. We just make, we make excuses and we lower the standard. St. Paul here is saying, no. You, as Christian leaders, as Christians, as servants, as bishops, you have a standard to keep. This standard is Christ. So all these characteristics are characteristics of Christ. He's not telling us to do something that Christ didn't show us here on earth, right? So,
I have one question.
yeah.
Like at work, when like in a group they are just talking, they start talking so bad words.
Yeah.
I don't like the talk.
Sure.
How I'm doing it, I'm just leave the place.
Sure.
Am I doing the right thing, or do I have to stay listening that?
No, of course not. Why subject yourself to garbage? Why subject yourself to sin?
And they seem like they are just saying something normal.
Because their standard that's where their standard is. I'm not saying they are they bad people. No. I'm talking about when you're living with Christ, there's a reason why when you hear a bad word, you cringe. Or why is that? Are we born with that cringing feeling? No. It's because we're living in that standard. We're working towards Christ. So if you're surrounding yourself with good and you're living towards Christ, then anytime something is off, you're just like, okay, I don't feel comfortable. I need to leave. I need to get out of this way. So yes, what did Joseph do?
He resisted.
He resisted, but what did he do when he resisted? He fled. He fled. He ran away. So he could have just stood there and said no.
Yeah.
To Potiphar's wife. No, but he left. So he didn't want to be around sin or, around bad. Yeah.
So I 100% agree. I just feel like the struggle with this and exactly what he's saying and being temperate is that sometimes we do cringe and we turn around and kind of like roll our eyes or like make a dramatic scene or like I can't tolerate this, I'm too holy for, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
As opposed to discreetly stepping out. And that's like a huge difference and people feel that whether you're, you know what I mean? Like it's genuinely love the person or...
So, but that, we have to be careful.
But I'm doing it in a peace.
Yeah. No, she's not saying what you're doing. Yeah. No, but it's because I see what Nancy's saying, because that you taking a role of a judge at that moment. You're saying, I'm better than you. I'm holier than thou. You're just saying like, what you're doing is wrong and this and that. You could call sin out. But just like, the saying, hate the sin, but love the sinner. That's what Christ does, right? Like, God loves us even as we are sinners.
Yeah.
So we're ought to do the same thing. So,
it's just inappropriate. I cannot.
Oh, I'm with you. I agree with you. What you're doing is absolutely right. Don't subject yourself to that.
I'm leaving that place with peace without doing.
So that's it. There's nothing wrong with that.
I can't stand that part.
That's what we're called to bring Christ everywhere we go.
Mm.
If we can't be somewhere, if we, like the old question, what would Jesus do? Sometimes Jesus was talking, they were talking to him, the Pharisees, and he's like, all right. He gives them the response, he walks away. He's like, you guys are being ridiculous. I healed somebody, but you're mad because it's a Saturday.
Yeah.
Like, what's the like? It's the mindset is different. So what you're doing is when you walk away, what you're doing is fine. It's good. Yeah. One second, Meg. Go.
I was just gonna say, sometimes whether we speak up or not, sometimes even if you regularly walk away from those things, sometimes people become curious and they will ask, like, how come you don't sit with us for lunch, or how come whatever. And sometimes God gives us those spaces, that opportunity to say, like, I just don't feel comfortable with some of the topics you talk about, or some of the language, or something like that. Like, sometimes we don't choose to speak, but sometimes God gives us the space to speak, or just our silent actions convict somebody else.
Yeah.
So there's a blessing in that too. Sometimes the opportunity will arise even as you quietly step away from those situations.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let us not forget, Jesus was continuously among sinners.
Yeah, of course.
You're always with sinners.
Of course.
So when you are put there for a reason, you tolerate them and let them see the light.
Well,
the light.
And the light comes different ways. So I love that point.
Yeah.
But it can happen through what Maggie's saying. By her walking away, they're going to start questioning. Because, it depends. It depends on the situation. So we can't, there's, again, just like anything else, there's no general rule. Yeah. So like if it's somebody, let's say if it's a friend of yours, okay, let's say a friend of ours is saying things that make you cringe a little bit. You can say, hey, like, because you're friends, you have that relationship. You can say like, hey, why you gotta curse? Like, why do you have to use those words to describe this thing? Why? What's the point? And you can even do it in a joking way, but be firm in the point of this is wrong.
Yeah.
Or like stuff like that. So you could do that, but if it's in a situation where you're not comfortable to speak up, stay away from the situation. What you're doing is right. Yeah.
One more thing. What she pointed out and what I pointed out are two different things. She is going with the law. And every time you're thinking about the law, you're thinking like Pharisees. You're passing judgment on sinners. That was wrong. You shouldn't say that. It's like making yourself... You're actually pushing that person away from Christ.
Oh, no.
Christ
so
is love.
No, but Jacob,
Jacob, can I respond to that?
Please.
I love that you're concerned about that thing, because that's very important. You're saying the right thing, that we shouldn't be judgmental. What I mean to say is there are times when, out of the love for the Holy Spirit in me, or my own weakness, I sometimes have to guard myself for my own weakness, not because somebody else is worse than me. That's not what I meant at all.
No, and then the other aspect, Jacob.
I might be influenced.
The other aspect is Maggie was saying by leaving it might trigger questions. So in that way you're showing the light. Like if you step away, if every day some people say inappropriate jokes and I walk away during that time, people are going to be like, why did you leave? Why do you always leave at this time? Be like, personally, I don't like those jokes. They're inappropriate. That's when you can.
That's rejecting. That's rejecting. You're too much. I have to move on. I mean, Christ, you show love. You show tolerance. You show, come to me as you are, he said. Come to me as you are. He says, well, here I am. I'm a full sinner. I cuss. I do this and that. Jesus said, come to me as you are. Don't clean up. Don't go take a shower and then come back here.
Fabio.
I just want to add to that. I really enjoyed what Nancy said is, like putting in what you mentioned before about putting yourself as a judge. Obviously, that we're no place to be a judge. And I like also what you said as well. So one thing that I'll just give an example. So like within my industry, a lot of people talk about inappropriate things at work, and it's in a cubicle setting as well. And a lot of times people will say things very inappropriately, and I kind of, I'm a loud person just by nature. And so like whenever I'm like talking and stuff, they'll start to realize when I don't want to like engage in conversation because it's inappropriate. And people have caught on to the fact that like I don't cuss or things like that, and they'll say like, oh, can't say those kind of things in front of you. Like they catch on. And it's not like a judgmental thing. They just know, you know, like I don't want to cuss in front of you, or I don't want to talk about a show that I watched.
But you didn't? Did you make a statement? Did you put a sign on your wall?
You don't make a statement. You just kind of, you know, take whatever they say for a grain of salt, and you step away.
Everybody,
and you engage.
again, but your situation might be different than somebody else's situation,
right.
because, like, you know, like it depends. You're in a cubicle setting, so you can't really leave where your area is. But you're in a situation where you've made your views clear.
Yeah.
In however way you did it.
In a respectful manner. So what Jacob said, like, you know, you still engage, but at the same time, you just know yourself.
In a loving way.
And you remember who Christ is as
exactly.
well.
Yeah. Okay.
I love what you said about how it depends on the situation, and that's why discernment is so important.
Yeah.
Because there's so much truth to what everyone is saying.
Yeah, exactly.
And Christ tolerated sinners, but he also went to places where he said, I can't go there because I can't work there because they are unwilling to accept me. So he refused to go to places because his presence wouldn't have made a difference.
He wasn't tolerant with the den of thieves.
Right. Why would he not go if it was profitable for them?
Yeah.
So there's times where we shouldn't do things. There's times when we tolerate. There's times when that's why discernment governs our love has to be governed with discernment.
Absolutely. Because
we need to know when to leave, when to be tolerant, when not to be tolerant, and all of that has to be done with love.
Thank you. Just so we can just move on from this point. Okay.
You know, when you find somebody cussing, or you see somebody do something wrong, you just turn around and look at them and says, "Did you enjoy saying that? Did you like saying that?
Yeah, but
did that make you feel good?" In other words, have to question what you're doing.
No,
question what they're saying.
No, but that's true. He's making a good point, Jacob.
Humorize and turn it into a laughing situation.
Jacob, but honestly, it really depends.
Building bridges.
It's discernment. Yes, but certain people react to certain things differently. So it depends. Like, I think if it's a close friend of mine, let's say it's Maggie, right? If I do something wrong, Maggie's gonna call me out.
Yeah.
Maggie's gonna just say, "What are you doing? Why'd you do it this way?" So, but she could do that. But if it's somebody else, if she's not that close, she might just not say anything.
All right, well, let's go to this religion business with the Muslims, you know.
Well, no. Let's move on. No. Jacob, time out.
They won't tolerate you.
Time out.
See, that's religion. That's not Christ. That's religion.
Okay, so let's continue.
The rules of men.
Just 2 seconds.
Okay. Hold on, Jacob.
There's a saying in the Desert Fathers that every man, every woman, everyone is created in the image of God.
Yeah.
Don't let the evil that's in them distort that image of God.
Right. Well, how do you do that?
You reflect on yourself. If the person is sinning, right? Well, let me look at my own sins. He said the F word. Well, I said the B word. He did this. Well, I did that. Like, you should have your internal reflection that you should be looking at yourself and saying, I'm also a sinner. He's no better than me.
Yeah, right. Exactly. We're all in the same situation.
Very good.
So let's move on. Because we have 5 more minutes, and we're up to the second verse. So
I love that. Stuck in his verse.
So, of good behavior, hospitable and able to teach. Of good behavior, hospitable and able to teach. Of good behavior. Who sets the standard of behavior? Like we said, Christ. So our behavior it's not relative. Our behavior is not relative. That's very, very important. It's crucial to remember that our behavior is not relative. Now, further, hospitable.
There.
Why is that important?
Opposite of rejection.
Yeah, use this one is better. Huh?
Opposite of rejection.
How would you define hospitable?
Open door.
Welcoming. A Christian, love. A Christian needs to be hospitable. It's not negotiable. We have to be loving and welcoming to everybody. Not welcoming, I'm not even talking about welcoming as in entering the church, saying hi, this and that. No. But welcoming, accepting, loving, going out of your way. Going out of your way. I remember when I went to, we did a friend's trip, and I was in Texas. Okay? And somebody came, picked us up from the monastery, took us back, this and that, whatever. Went all the way out. I had to stay at his house, bought us food, and we were just shocked. We were just what's going on? What's wrong? What's happening? Who is this guy? We're staying at Jesus' house. Why is this guy doing so many things for us? And we started joking. We started thinking this is Southern hospitality. And it was a standard that they put for themselves. Being hospitable wasn't an option. None of these things are options. He didn't say if a bishop then must be, could be, if he wants to, try to be blameless. Maybe one wife, two wives, whatever.
Yeah.
A little bit hospitable, maybe not, depending on the person.
Yeah.
No. Remember, hospitable, it's black and white. Hospitable is based on the person, not the guest. You don't say, I'm going to be welcoming to certain people and not welcoming to others.
Yeah.
Christ said, love regardless.
That's religion.
Father Abraham was a good example.
Exactly. And Christ told us, says, love your enemies. Imagine how that went down.
It's all coming out.
Imagine how that went down when Christ said to the people, you heard what was said before, an eye for an eye, but I'm saying, turn the other cheek.
Right.
And then when he said, love your enemies, how do you think people's reaction were?
Weird.
It's not weird. It's not okay, they're sitting there taking notes, okay, all right, no problem. They're probably what are you talking about? What does it mean? And we'll end with this. What does it mean to love your enemies? What does it mean? Past the judging. Because love your enemies is saying to those who bombed the church in St. Peter's in Butrasea, love them.
Yeah.
What does that mean? What is that? It's mind-boggling. It's not. It's anybody who thinks this is easy.
Different level.
It's a different level. It's a different level. It's a different standard. It's a different standard. This is the Christ standard. So our goal is to reach that standard. So when you think of enemies, who do you think of? There's
Devil.
we think of the devil. But I'm talking about even here on earth, people that we're dealing with. We see terrorists, we see these horrible dictators, we see all of these things over our lifetime. Love them. Love them. Yeah.
So I remember one time that you mentioned, a long time ago, I think you mentioned to me in private, just about how you went to visit with the people who had their children shot at in the school.
Wow.
And one of the people, one of the parents forgave the shooter.
Craziest thing I've ever seen.
That's such a hard, when you really think of it and you really try to put yourself in their shoes, or if you've had some sort of struggle where someone really hurt you in a really negative way, that concept of love your enemy is such a hard concept to develop. And I don't know necessarily how to do that.
It's
vengeance God.
Definitely a work in progress. It's definitely connected to your spiritual journey, your spiritual path, your spiritual level. your closeness to God. You know, like if you're closer to the sun, you'll be brighter. Like, you know, like the reflection will be, you know, so those things will be easier. Is it ever going to be easy? I can't imagine it being easy, but it's
doable.
It's doable because of Christ. Again, it's constant work towards Christ, and He helps us with all these things. We're not doing this alone. Yeah.
Sorry, this is a favorite issue of mine because I went through it and I want to share a very short story. My only answer or response to that is your desire plus a lot of prayer. If you desire, or even if you don't desire, let me just say it's just prayer. Because
you're right.
My own personal anecdote that I'll say quickly is I was so upset with somebody that hurt me. I was like,
no.
God, I don't want to forgive this person. But I know I should, so if you want me to, like, you got to do something in me because I don't care to fix this situation. It's just go your separate ways. This person is horrible and did a horrible thing. But it was like probably a good year of that. And God did something only God could have done to reveal Himself in that like piece of forgiveness that needed to happen. And it was that, you know, anyways, I'll tell you the story then so that I don't take everybody's time. But it was something that literally only God could have done to remind me of the goodness in that person. And I knew it was a God thing. Like, He was telling me, calm down. Everybody makes mistakes. There's still good in this person. Move on. So I would say prayer.
So I obviously prayer is important, but also going back to what Athanasius said about the idea of seeing Christ's image in somebody. That we should, everybody, and this is, again, we all know this, but when we connect it to people, it gets harder. So everyone is made in the image and likeness of God. So Osama bin Laden, made in the image and likeness of God. ISIS, all of them, made in the image and likeness of God. What happened? Distorted image. What that looks like for everybody is different. There's, like, that's the whole point, is to go back to that image. When the story I shared, that to me, and just so we'll close with this point, it was the shooting at the school in Connecticut. No, in Connecticut, the elementary school kids.
There's one every year.
This one hit. It was in Connecticut, and it was about an hour and a half away from my house. So when it happened, I had friends that are teachers, and it was just, I mean, it's little kids that didn't do anything. Like, it really broke us.
Why do they do that? Why do they
hold on, Jake, one second.
Why are they bombing the church?
Hold on. When something like that happened, we said, okay, we were reading the Bible, and we said, St. Paul says, rejoice with those who rejoice, weep with those who weep. We were like, we can sit here and have a prayer meeting at church, or we go and have a prayer meeting there in I forgot, Sandy Hook, Connecticut. So we decided, let's just go. It was an hour away, or an hour and a half. We get there, and all the news stations are there, CNN, Fox News, everybody, Anderson Cooper's on one side, whatever, as we're walking by. Like, it was just completely fresh. It was the day after. And we walk around, and then there was an interview with one of the parents. A parent that lost his daughter. He had 2 interviews. He had one that night, and he had one the next day during the day at his house. I'll never forget the image of it. And they're like, how do you what would you say? How would you respond to this? Which I thought was rude to even talk to the family at this at this time.
Yeah.
And he said, I just want to say, I forgive him. I forgive his family. I'm praying for him, and I'm praying for his family. And and when he said that, chills. What do you mean? Because this guy got it. This guy got it. This guy got what I want. This guy he saw the image of Christ. He loved the sinner, hates the sin. Is he happy this happened? No. Are we happy that this attack happened in Egypt? Or any of the attacks? No. We're not happy about it. But we pray for those people. We pray. We constantly pray. And glory be to God forever. Amen. Any